The right to vote is under attack in America. Across the country, Republican-led legislatures are enacting laws that make it harder to cast a ballot. These measures, often justified in the name of election security, disproportionately disenfranchise people of color, the poor, and the elderly. Now, a new threat to voting rights has emerged: the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility (SAVE) Act. This federal legislation, recently passed by the House of Representatives, would impose onerous documentation requirements for voter registration, potentially disenfranchising millions of eligible voters. The SAVE Act is a solution in search of a problem. Voter fraud is exceedingly rare in the United States. There is no evidence of widespread fraud that would justify the sweeping restrictions imposed by this bill. Instead, the SAVE Act appears designed to suppress the vote, particularly among groups that tend to vote Democratic. Its passage is a dangerous escalation in the Republican assault on voting rights. The SAVE Act, passed by the House of Representatives on April 10, 2025, mandates proof of U.S. citizenship for federal voter registration. This seemingly innocuous requirement has far-reaching consequences. Under the bill, prospective voters must present specific documents such as passports, government-issued photo IDs, and birth certificates to register to vote. These documents must precisely match the information on their voter registration applications. While supporters argue that this measure is necessary to prevent non-citizen voting, critics contend that it is a thinly veiled attempt to suppress voter turnout. The Brennan Center for Justice, a nonpartisan law and policy institute, estimates that over 21 million Americans lack easy access to citizenship documents. This burden falls disproportionately on low-income Americans, people of color, and the elderly. Moreover, the SAVE Act imposes strict penalties on election officials who register individuals without the required documentation, creating a chilling effect that could further disenfranchise eligible voters. The SAVE Act's documentation requirements pose a particular challenge for married women who have changed their names. These women often face significant hurdles in obtaining the necessary documents to register to vote. They may need to track down decades-old marriage certificates or navigate bureaucratic mazes to update their identification documents. The process can be time-consuming, expensive, and ultimately insurmountable for some women. Consider the case of Sarah Jones, a hypothetical resident of New Hampshire who recently moved and attempted to register to vote. Sarah, who took her husband's last name after marriage, was unable to register because her driver's license and birth certificate did not match her current name. She was told she needed to provide her marriage certificate, which she had misplaced years ago. Without it, Sarah was unable to exercise her fundamental right to vote. Sarah's story is not unique. Millions of women across the country face similar obstacles to voter registration due to name changes. The SAVE Act exacerbates these challenges, creating an unacceptable barrier to the ballot box for countless eligible voters. Representative Deborah Ross, a Democrat from North Carolina, estimates that the SAVE Act could disenfranchise up to 69 million women. This is not merely a hypothetical concern. A similar proof of citizenship law in Kansas, enacted in 2011, prevented over 31,000 eligible voters from registering to vote before it was struck down by a federal judge in 2018. The SAVE Act's impact on married women is just one example of its discriminatory potential. The bill's onerous documentation requirements threaten to disenfranchise a wide range of eligible voters, including young people who may not yet have driver's licenses, senior citizens who no longer drive, and transgender individuals whose identification documents may not reflect their current gender identity. By making it harder for these groups to vote, the SAVE Act undermines the very foundation of our democracy. Section 5. The Specter of Voter Fraud. Supporters of the SAVE Act argue that it is necessary to prevent voter fraud and ensure the integrity of our elections. They claim that the bill's documentation requirements will deter non-citizens from voting and maintain accurate voter rolls. However, there is no evidence to support these claims. In fact, voter fraud is vanishingly rare in the United States. A comprehensive study by Loyola Law School professor Justin Levitt found only 31 credible instances of voter impersonation fraud out of more than 1 billion ballots cast between 2000 and 2014. These findings are consistent with numerous other studies that have debunked the myth of widespread voter fraud. The Brennan Center for Justice, for example, analyzed hundreds of alleged cases of voter fraud in Texas and found that the vast majority were the result of clerical errors or other administrative problems, not intentional wrongdoing. Section 6. A flimsy justification. The lack of evidence for widespread voter fraud exposes the SAVE Act for what it is: a solution in search of a problem. The bill's true purpose is not to protect the integrity of our elections, but to suppress voter turnout among groups that tend to vote Democratic. This is a cynical and dangerous tactic that undermines the very foundation of our democracy. The SAVE Act is part of a broader Republican assault on voting rights. In recent years, Republican-led legislatures across the country have enacted a wave of restrictive voting laws, including voter ID laws, cuts to early voting, and purges of voter rolls. These laws disproportionately disenfranchise people of color, the poor, and the elderly. The SAVE Act is just the latest and perhaps most egregious example of this trend. Section 7. Echoes of Jim Crow. The SAVE Act's targeting of married women is particularly troubling. It evokes the poll taxes and literacy tests that were used to disenfranchise black voters during the Jim Crow era. These measures were designed to be race-neutral on their face, but in practice, they were applied in a discriminatory manner to prevent black Americans from exercising their right to vote. Similarly, the SAVE Act's documentation requirements may appear neutral at first glance, but their impact falls disproportionately on women, particularly women of color. This is no coincidence. Women, and particularly women of color, are a crucial voting bloc that has helped to elect Democrats in recent elections. By making it harder for these women to vote, Republicans are seeking to tilt the electoral playing field in their favor. Section 8. A political battleground. The SAVE Act has become a political battleground, with Democrats and Republicans squaring off over its implications for voting rights. The bill passed the House of Representatives on a largely party-line vote, with all but 4 Democrats voting against it. However, its fate in the Senate remains uncertain. Democrats are united in their opposition to the bill, and they are vowing to block it from becoming law. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has called the SAVE Act a blatant attempt to suppress the vote and has vowed to use every tool at our disposal to defeat it. Democrats are hoping to rally public opposition to the bill and pressure Republicans to drop their support. They are also exploring legal challenges to the bill if it becomes law. Section 9. The fight for the future of voting rights. The SAVE Act represents a crossroads for voting rights in America. If it becomes law, it will have a chilling effect on voter participation, particularly among women, people of color, and the poor. It will further erode trust in our democracy and make it even harder to ensure that every vote is counted. However, the fight is far from over. Civil rights organizations, voting rights advocates, and concerned citizens are mobilizing to oppose the SAVE Act and protect the right to vote for all Americans. They are organizing protests, contacting their elected officials, and challenging the bill in court. The outcome of this fight will have profound implications for the future of our democracy. The right to vote is fundamental to a free and fair society. We must do everything in our power to protect it.